Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Innovating Education, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of groundbreaking ideas and approaches shaping the way we learn and lead. Today, we have an extraordinary guest with us, Dr. Ryan Longnecker. Dr. Longnecker, or Dr. L, as we know him on the Hill, is the Associate Dean of Online Leadership Studies and Organizational Development at Trevecca Nazarene University. With a career dedicated to empowering students and organizations, Dr. Longnecker is a champion of innovative development, instructional excellence, and strategic growth initiatives. This episode is very personal to me because Dr. Longnecker played an instrumental role in my own journey at Trevecca. We'll be talking about everything from the unique cohort model to managing online higher education and how tools and feedback shape innovation. Now, without further ado, Dr. L, welcome. It's such an honor to have you here.
My friend, it is fantastic to see you as well. You said like this is personal to me because you were one of my first advisees, one of my first students, and one of my first graduates. So it's really, really cool to see you continuing to be an even bigger version of who you were back then, which was just a fantastic student.
Thank you. I'm honestly not sure if you remember this, but the first class that I took with you, you had this icebreaker. And so, in turn, I wanted to ask you and start out with another icebreaker. If your leadership style was a character in a movie or TV show, who would it be? You think you're more of a Yoda or Captain America? Who?
As much as I would love to say Yoda, because but I think on that one, I would have to say I am Professor Dumbledore. Because if you think about it, and I am not cuddly. I'm not a big teddy bear. I'm very introverted. I was raised in the north. I was raised in a very tight knit yet tightly wound family. We didn't do a lot of the. I go to these. I see these families that are just like hugging every minute and all this, and it's just like, wow, that's nice. So, but for me, if you think about how Dumbledore was described throughout this piece, he kind of led Harry down a path. If you'll remember the idea of the path. And there were times where there wasn't enough time for him to explain to Harry exactly every single piece of what was going on. And that is how I feel with the doctoral students, because our program is 27 months. I mean, that is fast. And so we tell them, you just have to trust me. You just have to go into the Forbidden Forest and do your dissertation, or you have to go to potions class and deal with Professor Snape, but at the same time, I'm also surrounded by, I have this amazing Order of the Phoenix, if you will. I have my McGonagall and Dr. Jana Roberts, which you didn't have the chance to meet her, but she's our director. She's our program leader for research. She is a graduate of the program, and she has become just my right hand. And she is that relational side. She is the soft side. She is the, not soft, but she thinks in a way that I can't. She's a tactical person. She's that, how do we refine this day to day, when I'm like, all right, what does this look like 4 months from now? And then also like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like there are also times when I'm like, all right, go do statistics with Professor Snape. And like some see Dr. Birch as Professor Snape, where it's just like, why are you killing me with statistics? And then in the end, you realize she loved you all along, and it's like you hug her at graduation and all that. So that's what I think I am. I think there are some times where I have to use my headmaster voice, and I have to make decisions about and for people that are hard, and that suck, quite frankly. But then there are times at the very end where, oh, well, I don't die. None of my students have killed me. But, we beat Voldemort, we crush the dissertation, we walk across the stage, and we go off into the wizarding world. And so that's like, I think that for me is that idea of, sometimes I lead in a way that the people in my charge might not understand and might resent me for. But I think in the end, when they've walked across the stage, when the DR is in front of their name or the EDD is behind their name, I think they realize there was a method to this madness, and everything worked together to get me to right now.
I actually see that. I really can. That's a great answer. When I was thinking about the question, like to think of myself as a Ted Lasso, trying to really build up people, find their strengths. But if I'm being honest, my husband's going to say I'm more like Bones from the
Mhm.
TV show Bones.
I think a lot of us, don't get me wrong, we are a Ted Lasso loving family, and like there are but I think Ted Lasso we have to remember he's a fictional character.
Yes.
And he's written as an aspirational character. And they wrote him beautifully with his weaknesses and all. But, can we pull parts from it? Absolutely. But we also have to remember that Lasso would not have been successful without Beard. And then eventually he would not have been successful without Roy Kent. So I think the big part of it all comes down to we are all part of a yin yang when it comes to leadership, and you have to have the other parts to round you out. No one person can be everything to everyone. Going back to an Everclear song. Never mind, I'm aging myself. But yeah, you have to find the people that round you out, and I have been lucky enough to do that.
One of the things that really stood out to me most about you and your leadership style was how open you were to feedback. Why do you think that accepting feedback is so crucial to managing an online higher education system?
Well, I mean, at the end of it, the feedback comes from your customers, and if you run out of customers, you don't have a higher education system to run. But you also have to recognize where you are in the journey. Running what I do every day, running a doctoral program is vastly different. Running a doctoral program with people who have already earned their undergrad, their grad, probably already have done quite a few years of professional work, that is vastly different from working with an 18 or a 19-year-old college freshman and sophomore, to where you have to be ready to push people in a way. And that kind of goes back to that idea of sometimes you have to make decisions and you have to push in a way that people don't like, but then you have to hope that at the end they recognize that the push is what helped make them a doctor. So that it kind of comes down to that one. And the feedback, my thoughts on feedback have not shifted. However, they have evolved, if you will. Back when I taught you, like we're looking, man, like 5 or 6 years ago, we still do the anonymous course evaluations after every class. But what I tell people in our program orientation is I tell them that we will look at those, but the only thing I use those for are for like large scale thematic pieces. Like if I see this kind of underswell, or if I see a lot of people thinking the same thing, then I will look at it. But what I don't do is I don't place a lot of weight on anonymous feedback anymore. Now, if I was working with younger students who there might be an intimidation factor or that sort of thing, I could see that. But at the end of it, my catchphrase has become kind of, you're earning a doctorate in leadership, show leadership. And so if there is something that you're willing to just blast a professor about anonymously, you should have the guts to call me up and say, hey, this is what's going on. And I tell them that. I tell them that in a little bit more professional and nice way. But I just kind of lay it out of like, if there is something that is keeping you up at night, or if there is something that you get to the end of class and you just want to blast somebody, you want to write a manifesto about how horrible this professor is, I can't do anything about your situation then. I need to know about it in the beginning when you're not quite as mad and it's maybe it's just starting to root a little bit. So I tell them like, hey, I will glance at that anonymous feedback, but when it comes to, hey, we're earning our doctorates in leadership, you need to show me that you're ready to have those tough conversations. And I'm so tired of, we live in this day and age that seems like people want to say, well, I'm worried about getting, what is it? I'm worried about they would come back at me or something along those lines. And I'm like, well, then you just have to trust me enough to know that if somebody did that, they wouldn't work for me anymore. That's that sort of piece. And so it's all about just kind of hopefully building a culture of trust, building a culture of expectation, but also building a culture of act like the person that you will be when that acronym is behind your name.
This is leading into my next question is just seeing how you say you've evolved over the past 5, 6, 7 years. And that's what I've noticed about you. You are constantly learning and improving, and you embody what it means to be a lifelong learner. It's inspiring to see how you've channeled that mindset into finding new ways to innovate and adapt. Can you share any tools or methods that you're currently using or have used in the past to enhance your online learning programs?
And kind of a two-part piece with it and I appreciate that. Thank you for like that. Is if there is anything that I would love to be known for, it is to be that lifelong learner. For me, that is what doctor means. Being a doctor should mean not being stagnant. It should mean, well, once again, forgive me for using the phrase, but we live in this day and age where, especially with social media, how polarized we're becoming, how like, dude, when it all comes down to it, it's like if you haven't seen the movie Idiocracy, it's almost like we live in it. I
I love
mean,
that movie. It's so
like
quotable too.
with more of a profit than anything else, and that's what's scary. Being a doctor means we don't have uninformed opinion. We live in this day and age where people can just they have these massive audiences and they can type whatever they want into social media, click send, knowing that a large population that reads their tweet are going to read it with no questions. They're not going to ask, or they're going to believe it. They're going to swallow it. And so I think part of being a doctor is that it's being I can't tell you like it has my colleagues, many of them are terrified of it.
Really?
I work on a campus. I work where some people literally believe that it might become the Antichrist, and I wish I was exaggerating there, and I'm not. And I whatever, everybody's got their kind of their views on it, but for me, it is AI is the future. It is where all of my it's where all of my development is. I use it every day, to continue our fictional character piece. As far as I'm concerned, anybody can be a knight fighting against ignorance. Like being able to look people in the eye and be like, you know what you just said, what you just repeated, what you just parroted is not quite true. Let's think about it this way. Here are the facts. Here is the history behind it. And I think the only way we can do that, because the world changes so quickly, is to be lifelong learners, to continue reading, to continue being up on things. And so for me right now, the big piece, it's artificial intelligence. Like be Tony Stark. Anybody can be smart, anybody can be brilliant, but then the only way you can fly, the only way you can be a superhero is to put on the Iron Man suit that is AI and let it give you those powers that you can then use to affect the world in an even bigger way. So people are all the time like, I'm gonna be replaced, and it's like, you're not gonna be replaced by Jarvis. You're gonna be replaced by Iron Man. You're going to be replaced by the person who uses Jarvis, gets in the suit, and can do twice as much work as you can do in a given day. So that's where everything is right now, is just challenging what is ethical use of AI, what is moral use of AI, what is practical use of AI, just all the different ways, trying to make sure that we're not those settlers that were just like, oh man, I don't need a wheel. I don't need fire. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's that idea of, I don't want to use AI. I want to be a better writer. It's like, well, AI can help you be a better writer. Like, so it's just, so that is the frontier for me. That's where all of my thinking will be for the next couple of years.
I use AI every day. It goes back to that lifelong learning topic that we were discussing earlier. As a doctor, we can't just take AI for face value. We have to be able to think critically and verify that what it's saying is true.
Mm-hmm.
You've always been ahead of the curve. I remember you using Calendarly before anyone had even heard of it. And that proactive mindset must be a big part of how you navigate the ever changing field of online education. How do you stay ahead of trends and ensure that Trevecca's programs continue to lead the way?
Well, that once again, that just comes back to that lifelong learning piece, because you can't not be a lifelong learner and also not be a lifelong evolver. I guess you could just read and not care. But like, if you were just reading and it was just washing up against your brain and bouncing off, then what's the point? You're wasting your time. But if you're constantly reading and constantly looking at, like just last night, we were bouncing in our faculty text message, we were bouncing the 2025 future of work report around, and just kind of, it was exciting for me to be able to go down this list of 15 or 16 things and be like, yeah, we can check off about 14 of those of what we're doing, and so it's just that piece of, if you are a lifelong learner, then you have to naturally be a lifelong evolver, because if you stop evolving, you die. That's, there is no, once you stop, you may as well retire. It's like that's it, because the world will not slow down. And people, if we've kind of seen this shift where the degree just isn't enough anymore. It'll open doors, but if you don't have the skills, if it's not built on skills, if it's not built on critical thinking, if it's not built on that idea of lifelong learning, all of those different pieces, it won't take you where you want to go. And so that's the piece that we're having. It can't just be about read 7 articles and write it's got to be, more of a critical thinking piece of how do we take theoretical knowledge, see our organizational problem through it, and affect that organizational problem. It has to move from the classroom into the organization. And so that's really what just keeps us pushing forward, because the problems keep changing. The world keeps changing. The world keeps turning. And the moment we stop, the treadmill's going to kick us off.
So one of the things that I loved specifically about Trevecca was the cohort model. My class was mostly a mix of administrators and educators. We had a few professionals from other industries in there. And then there was me, someone who had taught adult learners, but really didn't have the traditional teaching experience. And I was interested in curriculum intervention programs, trying to save the world through outdoor adventure education. Was that intentional of the cohort design? And have you seen that type of diversity influence the learning experience?
Absolutely. And I think my being locked into the cohort model is an immediate outcropping of the fact that I came through the cohort model. I, like you and I, hold the same degree. I was a graduate of cohort 13 on campus. We started with over 50 people, and I think we ended with around 30, 35, and those people, I would say probably at least 30 are still active parts of my life. So like I think the first part of that, why the cohort model is so critical, is that idea of support. If you remember the book Momentum, that we still use the same book in Leadership 1, where he talks about that invisible line of people that push you forward, hold you up, and pick you up when you need it. That is the cohort. There are times where you just want to quit. And when I went and did my DBA at Trevecca, we had that same cohort model. And there were times that I just wanted to be like, why am I doing this? And, like there would be a text message that would come through. It's like, hey man, I need your help, or like, and so that cohort, that support, that family that builds through the doctoral experience and then goes out into the world, that's a key piece. Like the best friend I have, Dr. Lee Rector, he graduated with me. He came and became my assistant principal when I was a principal. He's now still the principal where we left. And it's just, those relationships go forever. But then it's also exactly what you talked about. It's that diversity of thought. We get so siloed in our profession that the ideas that you saw from those other people, they spoke into your thinking and you have walked away with them. And then the things that the way you thought, it spoke into their approach, and they then went off. And so little by little, we may never completely break down the silos of thought because it's safe, like only education answers can answer education questions, or only business answers can answer business questions. But if we just keep on, if we pour everybody into the same pot and let it marinate, we may expand the silo a little bit, or maybe put a window in the silo, or a door, or, and the more that we can do that, the more flexible we are in our thinking, the more adaptive we are in our thinking, the more open we are in our thinking, the better leaders we are.
So one of the highlights of the Trevecca experience was the teamwork dynamic within the program. Every single class had multiple teamwork assignments. How do you think that team-based learning impacts that overall experience? And how do you guide students through the challenges of collaboration, especially with online students?
Absolutely. We still have much of that approach. However, we have maybe changed, like when you did it, it was Leadership 1. First class, we just dumped you right into a group project. And I was like, that might not be the best approach. So we've kind of shoved the team pieces back. and into more later in the program. Once, the idea of letting you learn how to ride the bike before you're riding a tandem bike, those sort of things. But a lot of it now, the focus is so to kind of build to how we approach the teaming idea. We have gone even deeper. When you were in the program, we kind of touched on Strengths Finder. We did like 1 week and then it was gone. Now, Leadership One is completely built on Gallup science, on the idea of understanding all of your top 5 strengths, understanding how they blend, how they synthesize. And then when you go into Leadership Two and then leading transformational change, it's all built around the idea of, all right, knowing my strengths, knowing Dr. Williams' strengths, knowing Dr. Roberts' strengths, all those different pieces. How do we build teams that would work best based on the strengths that are in there? And there is a vast amount of science behind that. It's being strategic, and that has seen some incredible results, not only in what I'm hearing from the students' experiences in their outside jobs, but also in their experiences within the learning of being able to. I think sometimes the issues that have arisen come from a difference in personality. Everybody's done the work to get there, but some people, if the assignment is due on the 20th, they want to have the work done and submitted on the 12th. Some people want to have it done and submitted at 11:30 on the 20th. And when you get a team like that together, it's understanding that and navigating those pieces. It's, hey, this is no different than what it is out in your world. No one is an island in their profession. We're going to work with people, be on teams, be in groups for the rest of our working lives. And so it's just that idea of pushing where we need to push, giving where we need to give, and finding that happy medium where hopefully the entire group can feel at least comfortable and feel good with what we submit. And so that's that idea. And it kind of goes back to that idea that we talked about feedback. I'm not going to get on a Teams meeting with 2 students that don't like each other. I'm just not. You're both adults. You're both getting doctorates in leadership. Go have a conversation and figure it out. And if you can't, then this probably isn't for you. If you can't have that hard conversation with one person, how are you going to have a hard conversation with an organization of 1,000? So it's just that idea of, you want to be a doctor in leadership, go show leadership.
So in the online learning environment, one of the things that I feel people criticize most is Blackboard, of requiring students to respond to the other students, right? And so what'll happen is the first student will say something really great, and then the second, third, fourth student would be like, oh, that's such a great idea, instead of adding depth to the conversation. So what tools or strategies do you think are the most effective for fostering community and engagement in an online environment?
So the funny thing, we talk about that in every class. It's like, initial post, the sky is blue. Reply, yes, the sky is so blue. When you said the sky was blue, I hadn't even looked. And I looked up and the sky was blue. You are so right. Thank you, student. That's literally there. That is the online discussion. So, and it was like that for a couple of years, but so what we have done is we've gotten much more strategic and much more prescribed about what we expect in replies. So we use what we call the 9 bullet point approach. And in the replies, they have to do, here's 3 things that I learned from you. Here's 3 questions that I have and why. And here's 3 suggestions that I would make and why. And that's where they struggle, because at first we were just doing that and they were just like, here's my question. And it's just like, why are you asking it? If you can't explain why you're asking it, you're wasting my time. And if you can't explain your suggestion, you're wasting my time. The quality we see, especially in our research courses, where we are kind of putting out there, like, here's the research questions that I'm considering, or here's the theoretical foundation that I'm building upon, those sort of things. The feedback there is fantastic, because Dr. Roberts and I are giving feedback from a more informed place, from, hey, we've done this a lot. But when you get it from people who have not done it, and it's like, hey, I don't understand this, how you just put it. That's a great way to see and, kind of be like, oh, okay, I need to rethink this. It's that idea of explain it to me like I'm 5. If you can teach a 5-year-old a concept, you can teach anyone a concept. And so we do that a lot in our courses. Like, we'll have a final question of, all right, explain it to me like I'm 5. Like
Yeah.
when we talk about quantitative and qualitative data, explain it to me like I'm five. And we explain it to them in pizza. How many slices of pizza did you have versus how good were the slices of pizza that you had? And then they have to explain it back to us like we're five. It's one of my favorite assignments because they do a fantastic job. But it's that idea of just being much more prescribed. And people, like, oh, we how do we get a good discussion? You make them have a good discussion. Like you make them, and it always comes back to like why is a superpower. Anytime you add why to a question, it takes it from whatever low level question it is and immediately takes it up. Like when you have to explain the why behind anything, that is higher level thinking. And so if you add that to your course design, it will take it up to the next level.
So, with leadership education, that's going to require a lot more than theoretical knowledge. It's going to be about practical application. So, how do you incorporate real world leadership challenges into the curriculum for your students?
That's easy. You let them bring it. It's like you said, when you were talking about how you were in a cohort with all of these different professions, you invite them, you say like, all right, here's the theoretical idea, or here's the conceptual idea that we're considering. Now, you bring the seasoning that is an organizational issue and you write about it through the lens of this. Maybe we're talking about self-efficacy or we're talking about professional identity. If we help the students see where those concepts are at work within the problems, we start more prescribed when you can start picking out the pieces, and then the better they get at it, then they can start seeing the theoretical issues. And so as we start pulling back the control, if you will, and giving more of it to the student, let them bring their issues, because that goes back to one of the needs of the 7 needs of the adult learner. They have to be able to bring in their perspective. They don't want to be, with a high schooler, with a teenager, with a lower level learner, you can prescribe learning to them. They want walls, they want a maze, they want, but the adult learner wants, like, they've been out, they've seen this in action. And so like when we have these discussions, I want them to bring in, all right, hey, think of an organizational issue around trust. Think of an organizational issue around teamwork, one of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, something along those lines, and then write about it. And then through that then partners with that prescribed approach to the replies that forces the discussion to go deeper, because you have to think through their issue. It's not just one prescribed issue that you can kind of do a cookie cutter answer to. You have to think through their issue and reply back to that. So I would just say, like, with the practical, which is that's all the EDD is. Let's see this practical piece through this foundational or theoretical lens. Let the student bring it in. When you're working with learners at this level, the masters might be a little bit less, but when it's doctoral learning, just let the students bring in the issue that they want to look at, because that's what we're teaching them to do.
And certainly those problems are complex, ambiguous. What strategies or frameworks are you emphasizing to help the students tackle those challenges?
That's a fantastic question. And I can't really say there is one given one. If anything, it's that idea of breaking down and understanding who you are right now so that you can set the goal of who you will be when you walk across the stage, and then who you want to be as you continue to grow into your doctorate. And so I think if it's a framework, it's just be all that you can be. It's like figure out your strengths, figure out what type of leadership best speaks to you, figure out what theoretical framework you believe. Like for me, all of my research is around self-efficacy. That is the piece that I believe most drives everybody. And so that's how I see things through. And that's how I approach a lot of problems. It's trying to build up self-efficacy. And that's how I approach course design, is building self-efficacy from weeks 1 through week 8. So I think it all comes down to just that idea of, hey, man, figure out who you are right now. Break it down, figure out your weaknesses, because we don't focus on building up weaknesses, because we can maximize strengths so much faster than we can make a weakness even equal. So what we do is let's maximize strengths, then let's go find people whose strengths are my weaknesses. Let's build out the Avengers and let's go take on Thanos. You know what I mean? Like that's all it is. It's like, so I guess the framework would be all that you can be, surround yourself with people who can be what you can't be, and then go win.
I love that. So, diving just a little bit deeper, we were talking about how in Gallup we have to self reflect, learn what our leadership strategies are, and then grow from there. How are you encouraging students to develop unique leadership styles?
I think that just comes back to that idea of the focus on individual strengths. Like that entire first course, they spend literally like full weeks to 2 weeks just looking at one strength. Like if it was achiever or futurist or collaborate, all those different pieces. And then it's just our personalized learning tracks, letting them have that focus of having that shared foundation of learning. But then we have like leadership in the age of AI. We have pre-K through 12 district leadership. We have coaching and consulting, executive leadership, healthcare administration, organizational intelligence, all of those different pieces of, all right, I have this foundation of leadership learning, but then I get to personalize my learning and I get to go into this specialized area where I get to see all of this learning in action. I get to see how to use AI to be a better leader. I get to learn how to attack organizational ignorance, build out learning, and then build out organizational systems. I get to see how a school district works. I get to see how executive level, what does it look like in the C-suite? I get to see how coaching and consulting work. So it's all that piece of just building on the individual, letting them bring in their individual perspectives and giving them the opportunity to practice the standard foundation in their own, in a way that best attracts them. That's what makes the best doctors when they walk across the stage and go into the world.
I hope that you've kept the book as part of the curriculum, The Dark Side of Leadership. I thought that was a really powerful one too. And I saw pieces of myself in that book as well.
It's still in leadership too. Dr. Bledsoe would never let that book go.
I have one final question for you.
All right.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of leadership advice, what would it be? And do you think you would actually listen to it?
Invest in Amazon and no. No, I've got to buy this CD or whatever. I don't know, dude. That's a great question, and I struggle with that one because I am I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and so like we often like us sci-fi nerds, we think about those ideas of like, would Back to the Future really have worked? Like if there's a paradox there, or Interstellar, all this. So like, I don't know, man. I don't think I would tell myself anything because every choice that dumb Ryan made, every ounce of guilt, of pride, of happiness, of sadness, of mistake, of triumph, everything that I've done has led to this moment right now and who I am. And I'm pretty good with who I am right now. So I guess just embrace who you are. Like there are still, don't get me wrong, like there are still choices that I made back there that if I think of them, I still cringe in embarrassment. Like I had a huge problem in my late teens and early 20s with honesty, and I got a horrible reputation. And it's just like that's one of those things that if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be the person that I am now, and hopefully enjoy the reputation that I think I have now, which is even kind of going back to that first question of, even if you don't want to hear it, I'm going to be honest with you. Even if you don't want to hear that, hey, you're not going to pass this class, I'm going to tell you, because the only way that we can keep you pushing forward is to get you enrolled in the next class and let's get it done. So I don't know that I could, because like young Ryan was an idiot and he wouldn't listen anyway. But I think it's just that idea of just sit and maybe be grateful to the previous versions of ourselves, because we are who we are now because of every step that they took. So I guess it just comes back to that. I would just give the kid a hug, tell him it's going to suck for a little while, but eventually you're going to find an incredible partner, an incredible woman. You're going to have two amazing little girls. You're going to have an amazing career surrounded by people who make you better, who have become family, have become the sisters I never had. And I'm incredibly grateful to him for putting me in, setting the foundation for me to become who I am now.
That is so deep. That is really deep.
one cup of coffee in, so I don't know how I got there, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your insights and learning more about the incredible.
Oh, here, so kind of tying back to that, I want you to know what we're doing now. You played a part in that. Me learning how to be a better professor, us looking at course design, all of the things that you did. So like all I can tell you is the same thing I would tell young Ryan. All I can say is thank you. Thank you for being the student that you were, for all the feedback. Thank you for going out and doing things like this, and thank you for just challenging us. Because just like it's like with students like you that just like you deserve the best, and so that's what kept pushing us to keep trying to give the best. So I'm proud of you. I couldn't be more proud.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me.
Really.
To our listeners, if you're considering taking your education to the next level, I cannot recommend Trevecca Nazarene University enough. You're going to love Dr. L. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep innovating education.